Okay. Let's talk about nationalism because so historically there has been, I think, 3 types of nationalism, which is first, a very old one, confessional, which is your religion defines what your nationality is. To be Spanish is to be Catholic. So that's like a big one. Second, you have racial, which is like, color of skin, ethnicity. This is kind of like what the United States and Australia kind of ran on. To be Australian is to be white, and they're now really only now kind of like changing that. America was kind of the same at one point. And again, they've kind of reckoned with that. The third is linguistic, which is like to be German, for example, is to speak German. And that's where the name of the country comes from. Deutschland literally means land of the German speakers. That's where like it originally came from. So Germany, as a relatively new European country, in comparison to like France. France did this very successfully. To be French is to speak French, to be Catholic. Some stuff about race comes later, particularly with the far right, but that's never really been official French policy. It's always been like language.
And to eat baguette.
Yeah.
To eat croissants.
To cheat on your wife.
And to be arrogant. All of those stuff.
But like you can go into the history of like what France did to the Basque, the Breton, the Catalans, the Languedoc, the Occitans, of just kind of like, no, speak French. The vast majority of people who took part in the French Revolution did not speak French. Langue d'Ile, as it's called, the language of like the area around Paris.
Okay.
Because it was, and like every country, multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-religion, and it's only with the state project to come later that like to be French is to speak French. And that like was quite successful. France is like the model republic that a lot of countries have based themselves off of historically. But Germany was very, very, very late to the game and was very, very bad at trying to implement any of these forms of nationalism. For example, I'm not going to say it, but I have a German last name. And that comes from the fact that during the 1800s, there was this period called the Kulturkampf, or the culture war, culture struggle, where Germany kind of got into their head this idea that to be German is to be Protestant, to be Lutheran, evangelisch, as they would call it. And for like the Catholics in the South, that was like, oh no, shit. And that's where like my great granddad comes from. He was like a little bit scared and moved to Ireland.
Okay.
But like, obviously it doesn't work. You look at Germany today, it's basically almost 50-50, Protestants in the north, Catholics in the south. So they quickly kind of abandoned that idea. They didn't really put a lot of effort into it. The Kulturkampf wasn't really that like aggressive or violent. Then Germany gets this idea in the 30s of racial nationalism. If you want to learn more about that, go to the History Channel whenever.
I thought you were going to say we have an episode about it.
We didn't think we had to bother, really. But like, yeah, so like that's like the period of time when like this kind of racial kind of aspect of it comes in. And a lot of that still lingers. Like one of the big culture shocks that have come into Germany is like how normal it is in polite conversation to refer to a German person of color as an Auslander. Like that's still quite common in the German language. Not an official documentation, obviously. They would use something like Migrationshintergrund, like migration background.
Potato.
Yeah. But like Germany has had like a black population in the West since like World War I. The Turkish population basically rebuilt this country, etc. And they've been here for generations.
And you will still say, oh, I know a Turkish guy who whatever. Yeah. And the guy is a second generation in Germany.
Yeah, and then we get into the...
but I have here the German people that they say, no, I'm not 100% German. So they are kind of, hiding their German roots, and they just want to have or show the nice ones.
But then we can get into another weirder form of nationalism that occurs in Germany, more with liberals than people on the right. But going back to the right, the linguistic thing comes in because even with like people who would consider themselves quite progressive, possibly vote for the Greens or the SPD or something, you will kind of often hear them say that like, oh, the Turkish Germans or the Turkish don't speak German correctly. They're not speaking it right. And like, of course they are. It's their like native language at this point for a lot of them. And like they're probably speaking like a very urban influenced German or a German influenced by like their Turkish background or like Arabic neighbors, blah, blah, blah. But it's still this kind of
hip hop.
Like, yeah. And it's this way of like gatekeeping who is and isn't German despite the fact that, yes, they pay taxes. They've lived here for ages. A lot of them are even in government. But like, yeah, this is not true. Germans have this very like particular thing about like who is and isn't German, who gets used the word Auslander. I would never get used. Like the word Auslander is never used against me until I open my mouth and try to speak German. but it is something that is very weaponized, and it's not true. But like the right wing has to say that because they can't say anything else, because that would be probably a crime.
But that's my main, for example, my main argument about that kind of comments that I saw recently in some other post that I did. That yeah, the AfD will love you if you were working and paying taxes and everything. Is like, well, are you assuming that everyone is white or what? Because is it like, do you want someone wearing a band on their arm saying that I'm a worker or that I'm legal? Because how are you going to distinguish a brown migrant from what your ideal migrant should be from the one that is not?
So
they're gonna receive this harassment, as you said. This this business person that has his Italian employees being harassed by far right extremists,
probably because they were just like speaking Italian to each other because they're all Italians, and why wouldn't you? Absolutely. And like it's I get very annoyed at this. I live in like a predominantly like Turkish German neighborhood, and a lot of them would like amongst themselves walking down the street might speak Turkish, or like other neighbors might speak Arabic and stuff like that, but they all have perfect German, much better than I do. But they're still like the assumption is always they're both simultaneously not working, or they're taking everyone's jobs, or they're not paying taxes, or they're all in crime. Like even the fact that like Germany calls the like Turkish mafia that it does exist in this country, like clans, is still very like weirdly racialized. They're like, no, it's a mafia. Just use the word mafia. You use mafia when you're talking about the Italians.
What happened there?
But yeah. Do you want me just to stop talking?
Maybe. I mean, this camera is still working, but maybe we can wait.
So I have to keep talking. Attention is on me. Yeah, because all of it is like really, 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 really based on assumptions of like, I see people of color in major German centers and assume that they don't pay taxes, that they aren't Germans, that they are unemployed or something along those lines. And never the assumption, which is the vast majority of them, are the children or grandchildren of people who built this country, probably are in school or in college or are working or all three of those things or whatever. They're like not really distinguishably different from other Germans. In fact, have been like leading a lot of like modern German pop culture in the form of like Deutsch rap. And like, I get the one thing that always irked me when I first arrived here, it was like very well-intentioned Germans using the word Habibi to mean dude, basically, like to kind of like use that like while speaking German. And it's just like, I don't really think Germany as a society has earned that yet, due to how shittily you treat the people who would natively say the word Habibi. So
it's like if white Americans wants to use the N-word.
Yes, pretty much. Like very similar to that. And it's just, I mean, I'll stand by this tweet I made long time ago of just like the German, based on their history, the Germans have no right to be this interpersonally rude. Like I really like, if I did the Holocaust, I would be so much nicer to people on a daily basis.
Good point. Yeah, good point.